Okay, so let's talk really quickly about the research project. I gave some pretty detailed instructions. I tend to opt on more detail when it's when I have to, but I do realize that the detail can be overwhelming. So I just want to talk a little bit about what my expectations are for this. So you're probably already familiar with research. This is going to be a little bit different from research of what you did back in 498. So if you remember the capstone project, it will have some similar elements, but this is more about research for the purpose of drawing conclusion from data. And so that's the goal. The biggest problem that we run into as researchers when it comes to this is having data, is finding the data that we need to be able to do a particular task like this. So my goal here was to try to encourage people to find data or to acquire data for research purposes. Now, this is a pretty straightforward practice and concept. Basically, you ask a question and then you say, where can I get data to answer that question? In practice, it's a lot more challenging than that. So I want to talk really quickly about the different types of data that you can acquire, and then you can start thinking about how you want to acquire data and then what types of questions you can ask. I will say some of it's going to seem easier than others. There are both advantages and disadvantages to each method that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go through a few of those. I definitely have my preferences as far as which ones I would encourage you to do, but you can come talk to me personally if you have any questions about that. So the first type is going to be called like archival data. And basically all that means is naturally existing data that exists out on the internet that you can download for free. You'll notice that in the instruction file that there's a blue line or blue highlight with an underline. That's got a link to a publicly available data set, open source data set. Now, this is probably the easiest to acquire, but it's also the most challenging to sort through because there's so much information out there. There's so much data that you've got to look through. So I think if you want to use this type of data, your first task would be to look at what type of data is available, find a data set, and then start saying, what kind of questions can I ask about this data? Okay, what kind of questions ask? Also, the challenge of this may be is that it may not be particularly clean data because this is just open source data that people provide for open use. So you may have to clean it or spend a lot more time cleaning the data. And you may not be able to directly answer the questions that you want to with archival data. This is a problem that accounting researchers actually run into, is that we want to ask qualitative questions, but data is quantitative in nature. So it's a really big challenge to transform that data. So I would say if you can find a data set that you like, this is probably the best resource for data if you can construct a question that you think is interesting. The next one is called survey data. I'm going to say survey data, I think, leads to the most interesting questions, but is the most difficult to obtain. The reason why is survey data is basically where you create a questionnaire, then you distribute it to people and say, hey, can you answer this questionnaire for me? And this is actually what I use in my research. The only reason it's a chore is that you could actually do this in a lot of different ways. You can go through and obtain the data in a lot of different ways. But if you're going to be asking questions of people, there's this thing called an institutional review board, which you can see the link on here. Truman's got their own institutional review board. Basically, they want to make sure that you're asking appropriate questions because there used to be, with this type of survey data and experimental research, some very, very unscrupulous scholars did some very, very bad things. And so now we make sure that we don't do bad things when we ask. And it's very, very difficult to do bad things in accounting. It's like, all right, you want to avoid asking personal questions or asking things that are going to be stressful. It's usually more reserved for other disciplines, but this is something we still have to go through and jump through hoops through. If you really want to construct your own data set and construct your own questions, I encourage you to go this route, but you need to do this really early because it is a time-consuming process to get this particular set of data. The third one is somewhat new. This is called AI query data, and it's just what it sounds. This is where you construct a series of questions and you ask this of AI tools. You basically go into like ChatGPT or Copilot, and you start asking queries and start trying to get information based on what the knowledge is. This is somewhat unproven. It probably will lead to the worst data analysis out of the three, just simply because it is such limited in its approach, but it's the easiest probably to obtain data of that nature. Now, there are some caveats to that. Keep in mind when you're doing data analysis that you don't want to be asking qualitative questions. It's like if you ask the question, why is the sky blue? You can't really answer that with data, or at least not very easily. So that's going to be one of the issues, and that's what we tend to go through AI tools for. Is we tend to ask very qualitative questions, very, very subjective questions. So we try to avoid subjectivity, or at least at the very minimum, we try to transform subjectivity when it comes to data analysis. So this is the most important thing right here, is obtaining the data, how you do that. And the reason I'm bringing this up so early in the semester is that you're going to have to spend some time on this. And so start thinking about this as we go through the rest of the deliverables. So there's 4 deliverables, as I mentioned. First one is going to be due at the end of week 5. This is 15 points. This is basically, you're going to tell me what your research question or your proposed research question is, some of your proposal, and then your data collection plan. So I'm going to make you think about this much earlier. You're not going to be able to wait till the end of the semester and say, oh crap, I got a project to do. I got to collect the data. That's not going to work. Okay. If you do that, it's going to end up being a very bad project. So you're going to start working on this now. You have to give me a detailed data collection plan, which of these you're going to use. There are certainly options outside of these. One of our graduate students last year did a research project where she was a GTRA and she collected grades from the class that she was teaching, BSAD 153 class she was teaching. There are certainly options available to there. That's a kind of a form of archival data that was proprietary to her situation. If you've got some data set that you can collect like that, that's fine too, but you just need to get approval from me before you can use that. Your second deliverable is basically an update on the research project. This is going to be right after fall break. You're just going to kind of tell me how have you completed all of your data preparation tasks for archival stuff. It's going to be data cleaning and queries that you're going to be, actually for all of these, you're going to tell me the detailed list of queries you plan on performing. By the way, when I say query, I think I've used that term before. Query is just a question that you ask of the data. All right. We call them different terms depending on the different tools we use. For Excel, we tend to use the term function. All right. That's a form of a query for the data. So when you hear the term query, don't get it like, I've never heard that term before. Yes, you have. You just heard it in different formats. Okay. So I use that term a lot. Query is just basically saying, this is the question I'm asking of the data. And depending on the type of tool that we're using, it takes different formats. For survey projects, you need to actually give me the status of IRB application and proposed timeline. IRB is not one of those things that you can submit and get the response the next day. You usually have to submit it a week in advance, and then you get a response. And usually that response is make corrections and make edits to it. So it does take a little bit of time. And then finally, AR projects, you just need to detail your plans for quantifying the results of all your queries. Like I said, if you're going to do a subject or an objective analysis, you need to be able to make sure that you can change subjective questions into quantitative results. Third deliverable is basically the results of your research. Unlike the capstone project, which is a big long paper, you're not going to be writing big long papers for me. I do encourage you to do some research on your own, particularly with research related to research in this area. I'm not going to be too stringent on source citations. If it goes beyond this particular course, if you say, wow, this is an interesting research project, Dr. Barnes, I'd like to pursue it further, that's when you can start focusing on that. But I'm more concerned about the data itself. So you're going to give me a summary of results of the research and queries, including your queries and any additional data analysis performed. You will note that I said do not include your data set here. It's tempting to say, hey, Dr. Barnes, look at all my cool data. It's like, yeah, that's great. I probably have looked at your data twice already. I don't need to see it in this space. All right. And then a brief written report discussing your research results and the implication of your findings. Then the final deliverable, as I said, this is actually going to be during the week of December 2nd. So our final week of the semester. This is the presentations. We have 3 days of presentations. The presentations are going to be a little bit weird. It's probably the easiest part and yet also the most difficult part of the presentation simultaneously, which I realize makes no sense, but it will make sense when we talk about it. So if you're on campus, which is everybody in the classroom, you'll be doing that during the presentations. If you're online, you'll actually be creating a video and uploading it to YouTube. It's going to be due at the end of the week, but it's going to be based on the guidelines for the three-minute thesis presentation, which basically a 3-minute thesis presentation in a nutshell is you have one static slide, which means you can't have slides and animation and stuff in the slides. It just has to be one slide by itself. So PowerPoint, Google slide. They have 3 minutes to present, and only 3 minutes. That's it. Okay. I said it on Monday. I said it once you hit 3 minutes, I cut you off. So you need to practice and make sure you have 3 minutes. The goal is, can you concisely present a complex research idea in a short time? And so you only have to prepare for a 3-minute presentation, but again, that's going to be a lot more to that than just that. It's not just getting up and speaking for 3 minutes. So that's going to be that. All right. So some notes. This is the one I can't emphasize the most. This is the one that I think is the most important. If you wait to week 5 to start working on this, you're going to get a frowny face from it. Okay. All right. Do not do that. You need to start asking me questions now. This is something that I realize that you don't have a lot of experience with, and I accept that. I think it's important to be able to understand this. We're starting to see a trend, particularly in accounting and business, where graduates, students who graduate from college, they need to be able to do qualitative or quantitative research on their own. They need to be able to find information and be able to determine what the value of that information is. And so that's one reason we're doing this project, is to try to encourage you on that. You think that we start talking about accounting, it's like, I know how to do Excel and that's good enough. They're starting to get to the point where, when I say they, I'm talking about future employers. They're getting to the point where they're asking for skills like in data visualization, data analytics, statistical analysis. If you thought you were done with stats after you got done with Stat 220, I've got bad news for you. We're not quite there yet. Having a broad array of skill sets will benefit you in this regard and will give you an edge on other students who are, or other candidates who are going to be graduating alongside you. Please be conscious, the topic area, restrict your project to research that is relevant. There's a lot of interesting data sets out there. I would love to tell you that you can do a research project over video game sales or sports statistics. Those would be something that I'd be personally interested in, but that's not going to benefit you as far as your career development. So that's why I want you to be able to focus on something that's accounting or business related. I would encourage you, before you start working too much in depth with your data set, once you find your data, come and talk to me about it. Say, I'm going to ask this question and do this data set. Get approval from me, and I'll say, that sounds like a great idea. Or I said, that sounds like a terrible idea, which I rarely will say that, but I'll be a little bit more diplomatic. Unless it's Kyle. As far as the research, needs to be quantitative in nature. So we tend to ask a lot of subjective questions as accounting researchers, but we definitely have to turn subjective questions into quantitative constructs. It's not impossible to ask a subjective question and do research on that, but you need to have a very good idea of how you're going to measure that, how you're going to actually be able to determine that. And so if you have some problems in that area, come talk to me. We can talk a little bit about it and work through it. It's just probably easier if you try to develop a quantitative question in nature, like I don't know what it is, like do grades improve before and after review sessions in a class, something like that. That would be an example of a quantitative question. Final piece of advice that I can give you is be prepared to ask me a lot of questions. All right. If you try to do this on your own, you're probably going to get frustrated, and I realize that. I'm asking a lot of you for this project. I think it's really, really important to be able to get out of your comfort zone and be able to do something like this. That being said, I expect every single person in this room is going to experience some frustration with this. And trust me when I say, when I do this, I'm not deliberately trying to frustrate you. I'm trying to actually improve what you can do as far as your graduation potential. The only way that you can really improve is to learn from it. The way you can really learn from it is to struggle. And part of that struggle can be eased by coming and talking to me. Okay. If you don't ask me any questions, I can't give you any advice, and the learning process becomes a lot more challenging. So be prepared to ask questions, whether that's in class, whether that's during office hours, whether that's email, whatever it may be. Whenever you have a question about the project, shoot it my way, and I will give you my best advice. All right. Any questions on this? Anything that I didn't cover that you're a little bit concerned about? So I hope to see a lot more questions about this as we start moving forward with this. Again, start thinking about this now. This is supposed to be a semester-long project, not a, oh, deadline's coming up project. Okay, so start thinking about it as early as you can.